Hello and welcome. I'm Lee Peterson. I'm the host of the weekly podcast, WDcast, which is called WDcast because it's brought to you by WD Partners, also known as Thinkers That Do. And there are thinkers that do because WD services range from strategy, design, digital operations to architecture, construction, management. You can find them on WDpartners.com on the World Wide Web. A second about this show, the discussions we have on WDcast revolve around relevant business topics, and we really kind of don't care what topics those are, but they have to be the burning platforms of the 21st century. And as we all know, there's a plethora of them and a lot for us to talk about. So without further ado, today I have with me the effervescent, the brilliant, the always thinking, the super gregarious Leah Cotterman. Leah is a key member of the WD Partners strategy team and a great free-form thinker on all things relevant and some things not, which makes talking to her even more interesting, at least for me and just about everybody I know. So, Leah, how are you today?
Hi, Lee. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so pumped. I'm so excited.
Well, that's great. You change your opinion by the end of it, right?
Yeah, no. I've been listening to these, and they're fantastic. So I'm super honored to be able to be one of your early guests.
Awesome. So a little disclaimer before we get going. The thoughts and opinions expressed today belong to the members of this discussion, do not necessarily represent those of the companies they work for, which in this instance is the same company. So, Leah, you have, from all my discussions with you, you have like one of the most interesting backgrounds in the history of man. If you could just tell everybody a little bit about your background, that would be great.
Yeah, I like to refer to it as nonlinear because that makes it sound a little bit more like acceptable. And it also makes me what I can maybe refer to as some form of a unicorn, right? Like that's maybe patting my own back a little bit too much. But the way I describe it to people is that my first love was all things international. My first trip to Italy when I was 16, and I sort of fell in love with experiences outside of just the four walls that I grew up in. And then my next love affair was with retail and shopping. And then my third love affair was business. And what eventually happened to me growing up as an adult was those three things intersected. And I sort of found myself in the world of global retail experiences and business. And so that's where I am today. It didn't make as much sense maybe as I was going through it, and it all found its way together. So I am a former Italian instructor and an MBA, and now I'm a retail strategist, and it makes sense, I swear.
But you are fluent in Italian, correct?
Yeah. I studied at Ohio State. I got my master's there, and I also got to teach there and also at a small liberal arts school here in the Columbus area, and I adored it. I loved what I did thoroughly. And that sort of set the pace of the rest of my life, that I never wanted to do anything that I wasn't deeply passionate about. Yeah. So now I'm here.
Huh. And so you are a part of the strategy team at WD Partners. So what is that? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, so essentially, I'm not the only unicorn. I would say that our all-female crew, actually, of strategists within Strategy and Insights at WD, we're all unicorns of sorts in that, we play this bridge role between understanding what the client's needs are and solving usually, pretty much prototypically, complex business problems and trying to figure out how design can solve that. So it's innovation and it's design thinking, and you kind of have to be able to live in a lot of different worlds. And so we do consumer research, we get out in the field a lot, we experience the world as much as possible so we can pull like those out of context analogous challenges out and be able to come up with some really innovative solutions. But
observational stuff.
Yeah, observational stuff, like getting out into the retail world, the world of experiences, because man, there a lot to learn when you stop thinking just purely inside of your sector or your industry or your market and start stealing some great ideas, or at least being inspired by them through something very much outside of your comfort zone. So asking the question, like, what can a bank learn from a retail experience?
Southwest Airlines.
Exactly. And, that model works time and time again.
So you kind of just said this, but like, how do you guys operate? Like, what's the process? What happens?
Yeah. So usually when we engage with a client, they have a general sense of the challenge or the opportunity, right? Like the general sense of the problem or what they want to try to achieve. And we step in there first and I love the fact that we're called WD partners because I always feel like a partner. We step in with those clients and we help them define really what are the areas of opportunity we want to be going after, right? Drilling down from there and deciding, okay, we've got all these problems that we could solve or all these challenges that we could solve. And what are the right ways to get at that? Well, we want to talk to real people. We want to find out what they really need, especially unmet needs. So that's where the most opportunity usually is. And, talk to them, figure out what's working, not working in their space or expectations that are new expectations they're being set by the world around them. And begin to come up with some concepts through a lot of different concepting processes, and then validate them and make them real and go through an order of testing and iteration. It's design thinking in the purest form. So we really love what we do, and there's good stuff out there that we've been able to be a part of, and we love it.
Yeah, I've seen some of it. It's terrific.
Yeah.
So of all that stuff, what energizes you the most? Like I know I've worked in design for a long time. There was always like a piece or two of things. Like I used to love to interview people. I mean, I remember interviewing CEOs thinking, oh my God, this guy's the weirdest person. This person is the weirdest person I think I've ever spoke to in my life. And it would just keep me going. Like, you know what I heard today? Is there something like that for you?
I would say whenever we get an opportunity to talk to real customers and hear their vantage point, and especially when you start coming up with generating new ideas of what it could be, that to me is so exciting because, when you sit in a room of executives or operators in a business they're extremely familiar with, there's this tendency to, well, we know the problem and we've tried these solutions that seemed apparent to us, and this doesn't work because of X and that doesn't work because of Y, and we just can't. And there's lots of can't, won't, shouldn't. There's lots of parameters that kind of find their way in there. But
did it before.
Yeah, exactly. And
I did it 5 years ago.
Yeah, but maybe that just wasn't the right time for you. But, then you talk to real people out in the world and you get them to reflect on their experience with that brand or experiences in general in that space. And you start asking them, well, what could it be? What if it were like this? And people actually have a strong ability to imagine new realities, and it's so much fun. And then turning around and sharing that with clients is even more fun. It's funner.
So funner. So it's people for you, then, huh?
Yeah, I would say it's people. I'm sort of I'm a weird character in that I'm as much of an introvert as I am an extrovert. It's funny. I get a lot of energy by being alone and doing quiet activities like reading, and then I get a ton of energy from either presenting or engaging with people in real life. But I think I need both sides. So I would say it's people, but it's also just curiosity that fuels me.
I think we've talked 100 times, and I think we have a lot in common. I'm the same way. Like
Leah and Leah, there's something there.
Yeah. Duh.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would talk to a CEO and get a great energy out of that, but then get just as much energy out of reading a book on a plane on the way home. That
I mean, I try to explain this to people all the time that I think the reason that works for me is actually something that is scientifically proven, that insights come from when the brain is in a default state. And that's not me just trying to sound smart. That's real and scientifically proven. And you're in a default state when you're doing things that are repetitive, and your brain is just kind of goes like in the zone, like when you're driving or showering.
Cutting the grass.
Right. You're doing something that's brainless. And that's when your mind can actually wander just enough to start to stitch some things together. So it's the number one reason why I put a little white notepad that's waterproof in the shower, because I have a tendency to connect data points and come up with answers when I'm showering in the morning. So
can't you just magic marker the tile? Or?
Yeah, I live in a nice new house. I don't want to find out what sticks and what doesn't. But
there's some wicked looking graffiti.
No, it was so successful for me as a tactic to capturing great ideas that we ended up buying everyone from the team of one of our clients that we work with one of these pads as well.
I've heard that about dreams too, where you should have a pad right by your nightstand, and you wake up, you have this really weird dream. Like 10 minutes later, it's gone. So you write it down.
I have a tendency to email myself in the middle of the night, because I'll start thinking about a presentation I'm building or a problem I'm solving, and I think of something, and then I'll email myself.
Okay, shifting gears a little bit, you are about to give a talk about innovation at next week's Retail Summit here in Columbus. And can you talk about that a little bit, like as we say here, talk about what you're going to talk about?
Yeah, right. So it's a summit that's essentially all around retail, right? But this is a particular track talking about innovation space in there. And even more particular to that is experience innovation. And so those are buzzwords. And I even recognize that in my talk. But addressing the customer experience and looking at what is right and wrong and where opportunities lie, and innovating, in other words, designing something new that breaks the mold and adds value, is really the opportunity out there. And so my talk is all about how to innovate like a rebel. And so this idea of rebellion is exactly what we think is what is missing, really, that there are these competencies that strong innovation teams need to have, and they kind of fall into these archetypes. You need someone that's the provocateur, and you need someone that's the entrepreneur, and you need someone that's the experimentalist, and all that's great. But what is really missing, the secret sauce, is this idea of rebellion, essentially saying, I know the rules, but I'm willing to break them, and I'm fearless, and I'm just as much curious and confident to make something that's noticeably and meaningfully different out in the world. So that's the idea in a nutshell. I don't want to give too much away.
I think that's really good, relevant. Like, I always think back like in time, and there's always history to prove certain things out. And I think we were talking about this the other day, but punk rock, when punk rock came along and everybody was like, oh my God, it's the worst thing ever, blah, blah, blah. But think how many things came of that. I mean, 10 years later, everybody was dressed in black. Like there's Mohawk haircuts now on frat boys,
Well, yeah, I mean,
androgyny.
Yeah. I mean, it's an analogy for what is happening in business at large, but most specifically retail, right? Like people are gravitating to the brands or experiences that are different and resonate in
supreme.
They resonate in a different way. And, the guys that are confused and struggling are the ones that are in the middle. They're kind of trying to be everything to everyone, therefore nothing to anyone. And the ones that are really saying like, screw the rules. We're just going to go big on this one particular idea or philosophy or whatever it is. They're the ones that are really like changing the game and having a following, creating a culture around them. It's the reason why KFC has chicken scented nail polish. That's a real thing, and KFC Colonel pillows. So when you go to bed at night, you can be staring at the Colonel's face because you love it that much. Not everybody's going to be so deeply loved. Maybe you're a retailer out there that is, more about being functional and the utility of your brand. But hey, listen, we know dentists' offices that are so deeply loved that people literally put the dentist office magnet on the back of their car. They want to let the world know, I go to this dentist office. So I would argue that just about any brand can reach that point of brand love and affinity.
I don't believe that.
It's true. It's true.
I don't believe that one.
That's okay. Teach their own.
So let me ask you this. And I was just asked this the other day. So, brands become really strong, like Abercrombie and Fitch. And, I remember a time, I think the late 90s, and when they put out their Megalog and the early aughts and everything. I mean, there was almost no stronger brand. And they were completely irreverent. And everything they said was like, parents don't like us, and that's what makes you like us, and that type of thing. But they faded. They did whatever they were doing too much. Do you think that is there a limit to some of that, or like how do you stay at that level?
Yeah. So I love referring to this as like the fallacy of like the flat line. So what I mean by that is, one of my first roles in corporate retail was doing sales projections. And, we would get together on a weekly and monthly and quarterly basis, and everybody asking, what's the sales projection? And if we do nothing, the assumption was always, 0% growth, flat. But that's exactly what went wrong in that time period. People believed that if they did nothing, the world around them would remain exactly the same. Therefore, all of the performance in history would repeat in the future. Well, so flawed, so deeply flawed. And that is exactly why I believe Abercrombie struggled in these last, 10 years, and then they're experiencing the turnaround. It's because they assumed that nothing had changed. They weren't evolving to the world around them. The ideals of the younger generation changed, and they did not. They didn't keep up with it. They didn't remain relevant.
So you're saying doing nothing is going to cause a dive?
Well,
it's going to have a reverse effect.
Yeah. I mean, it's a misconception of the public that what Darwin meant by survival of the fittest was fit like buff, and it was fit as in fitment to the evolving environment around them, their ability to adapt. So the fact that, Abercrombie as the example here did not adapt, that they just said like, hey, we're awesome and we're not going to change. I think that's what ultimately hurt them and had to kind of spur a turnaround effort.
Simply from a demographic point of view. I mean, you were a big fan in the 90s. 20 years later, you've got kids, stuff like that. You're not going to the same brand, period, anyway.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're speaking to a different generation, right? But they and so many others are really starting to make some smart moves. I feel like the brands out there are getting bolder, like finally starting to notice that, hey, look, there are niche brands that can open up their digital doors overnight because there is really no, barrier to entry, and they can eat our lunch if we do nothing.
I kind of love that personally. You'd be a local candle store, but you're actually selling things globally.
Yeah, it's true. Anybody can do it. Like I said, very little barrier to entry. You can just get in the biz.
So today, everybody, the buzz is around a consumer. I just came from a conference, and all they talked about was personalization, and data, and creating loyalty, and all this, and understanding who the customer is. And when I think about that, I mean, I worked for a retailer a long time ago, and we said the same thing. We just didn't have the numbers on them. So how do you see this whole movement? Because I know that you use the data.
Yeah.
You understand the data better, a hell of a lot better than we did with nothing. So how do you see this as different?
Yeah. So it's funny. In the last 10 years of my career, I've watched everybody go through this movement of, discussions around how do we become more operationally efficient, and how do we, just like eke out the profit. And then as we kind of come into today, the tides turned into this discussion around customer centricity. But I still kind of feel like there's a little bit of jaw flapping still happening, because when you sit down in a meeting and people are not talking first about the customer benefit, that's what's sort of still messed up about the whole system. You have to have a really clear understanding as to what the value is that you're allowing the customer to derive. If you miss that point, you're not really functioning as a customer-centric organization. If the number one desired outcome is just simply to get it done faster. Yeah, right, exactly. But there has to be a customer benefit, or they're just going to go elsewhere. And it's quite that simple. You've got new brands emerging every day, new companies emerging every day that are going through these customer journeys, through these customer experiences, figuring out what's broken, and then targeting that one thing to do and do it much better, and it's stealing customers left and right. The moment they steal your customer, we've talked about this before, that scarce resource, the moment they steal that customer, all they have to do then is grow and pick up more pieces of the customer value, or of the value chain. And then you have been effectively disrupted. Effectively.
Yeah, it's interesting. How much of a factor then do you think technology is in all of that?
I mean, technology is an enabler. It's the thing that takes away the boring tasks that a human could be doing instead that are more valuable. It adds predictability to add more value for a retailer to say, I knew you wanted this because you wanted that, or I knew you were coming here today, so we did that. Technology is not the disruptor, and we were talking about this as well.
Yeah.
It's just the thing that has enabled stuff to happen faster, smoother, smarter. And it's not the answer, and it's not the thing that is really the cause of all of this change. It's just a factor.
So what we were talking about too was that technology wasn't the disruptor; it was the customer
that
was the disruptor.
Yeah, because they're sitting in the seat of power now. They have more choice today than like they ever had, and that's across so many industries.
So much fun. Yeah. I love
it. Because then, people can get exactly what's right for them, and that's why I think personalization and customization has risen so much to the top, because it's a function of all that convenience people are looking for. They have no time. They need it my way, exactly right for me. Don't bother me with the stuff I don't care about. All the reasons that cable is dying, and all of these platforms that allow you to choose exactly what you want to watch, and on your time and at the right place, are growing. And that's just the media world. That is happening across every single industry.
Yeah, and you also just described Amazon.
Oh yeah. I mean, when people think that it can only be the way they can only deliver their value or their service or their product in the way that's easiest for the brand, that's when they've missed out. It's meet me where I am and give it to me the way I want it. If you can't figure that part out, or at least get there, you're going to start to be in trouble.
I think that, what you were mentioning about the benefit too is where people like Amazon kind of figured things out, because they understood that there's a gap in a certain area. One of them was speed, another one was convenience. There's always price. It's the United States. We're the most price-crazy nation on earth. But there was other things, and people call it convenience, but it's more than that. Even now, like I buy all my center grocery store stuff online. I don't want to go to the store and get paper towels. That's not.
It's a commodity. Yeah.
It's not an experience. It's not anything. It's just give me a damn paper towels. Isn't there like a box outside with a paper towel? Oh, yes, there is.
Yeah. I mean, and internally we refer to this as, make my trip worth the trouble. Like people have no time. You've got, more working, parents in one household. You've got people working more hours in the day than they did X years ago. You've got, commutes and all these things. And so when people have the spare time, they want to do it, doing the activities that add more value to their life. And if that little activity is more of a
more Netflix.
well, I mean, if the things you can offload are errands, great. Less errands, more fun. And that's the equation people are all trying to figure out for themselves. And it just is like waterfall. It's affecting every single consumer industry around it.
I just gave a talk, and one of the things that we were talking about was that big businesses are saying we have to organize everything around the customer. Mm-hmm. Everything has to be based on this customer. But in reality, they're really organized the way they always have been.
Oh, yeah.
There's an HR group, there's a merchandising group, there's a store development group, there's a merchandising group, et cetera, et cetera. And then you ask them, well, you've got to do buy online, pick up in store. And it involves all those. So really, the organization, and tell me if you agree, like the organization is kind of a matrix type of thing where you need somebody, if you want to be customer centric, customers want buy online, pick up in store. It's crazy, I know, but they really want it. So how does that get done? Because you and I know it's tough to do when you go into a big company.
Yeah, this is kind of one of the reasons why I love working with companies that have gotten more agile, or they are at least trying to step into that space, because they get that when you keep the team small and you keep it cross-disciplinary, you can start to work at the solution level, not the discipline level. And so I'm gesturing horizontal, not vertical, right? For those who can't see my Italian gestures. I talk with my hands.
She's waving her arms right now.
Right. It's just when you start to think at that level, that's when you can work fast and smart and centered around solving problems, as opposed to just thinking about the thing that you're best at doing. And I think that it's kind of the way of the future, because it's already starting to change the way that students learn in school. It's, more project-based and less like, we're going to learn about this subject right now. It's like, you guys are going to now be a team and you're going to solve this problem together. And you're each going to have your individual strengths and weaknesses. So I think it's just, the world's going to change a bit in that regard. It has to.
So you mentioned it, and people ask me this all the time. Store of the future. What is it?
I think it's at least two things. I think that it is that stores become stories, in the sense that they stop being places where you go to procure goods, and they become places where you go to find solutions, and stories can bring to life different solutions. And then the other side of it is I think that it's going to be a combination of fast and slow. I think that anybody who thinks that it's all going to go digital, or it's going to somehow, I don't know, the internet's going to break and it's all going to go, nobody's saying that. It's not going to go all physical, but I think that...
That's for sure.
Yeah, right. I think it's just going to continue to be more almost divergence between the things that can be fast and the things that need to be slow. And what I mean by slow is the immersive, the sensorial, the guided, the concierge, et cetera, versus the fast, which is the convenience, the grab and go, the 7-Eleven style, and the fast and the slow, it applies to almost everything. You just have to kind of figure out who's your customer, what's your offer, what's right for that market, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's what's really going to happen.
Pretty cool. I think I agree with you. I think the future of stores is something we've kind of always wanted. A lot of people now are looking to hotel lobbies, like some of the brand new hotels in New York, where you can sit there and relax and get something to eat, or you can go upstairs on a rooftop, or you can go to a club, within it, or you can just go relax in your room. There's like 15 different choices. It used to be like you get a room and it's, $120 and you go up there, and then those days, fortunately, are gone. Okay. So I'm gonna ask you some questions, and I'm looking for kind of a quick answer.
You got it.
I hope.
I could be quick.
Your personal favorite store. It could be online too.
Favorite store? Anthropologie. I friggin' love Anthropologie. Everything about the way that they incorporate candles in almost every square inch. So I feel like I'm just having this magical smelling adventure. It gets me every time. And I love the fact that they use like floor to ceiling to do their merchandising. I just feel like I'm inside it, just heaven. Love
Displays
it.
too.
I love it.
Yeah.
I live for it.
I had an old boss of mine tell me when we saw one of our first anthropologies, he said, that's an accessory store in disguise.
Well, I think what's brilliant is that like everybody they hire, from what I've heard from friends inside, is that they mostly all have a background in something in visual arts. So these aren't just people that just want to work retail. They're people with a real creative skill.
Do you have an idol in the industry, in the industry that you work in, the strategy industry?
You know, this sounds so cheesy. I kind of idolize the leadership here. I know that's kind of a really geeky thing to say, but you are awesome. Elaine Kleinschmidt is awesome. Dan Stanek is awesome. John Bajorek is awesome. Like these leaders, and I know I did not just name them all, but I learned something every time I sit in a room and even just listen to y'all debate with each other, because then it almost even just teaches me how to ask questions and how to think differently. Elaine was the one that taught me or opened my eyes to a Socratic questioning, which is kind of like, asking a question with a question.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
You know the answer.
Yeah. I feel really lucky to work with people that are far smarter than me. It's good.
It's always been. It also helps to hire people far smarter than you, like we hired you.
Well, thank you. And I think that everybody that's come after me is smarter than me. So we're just on the up.
so eventually I'm the hell out of here.
Yeah.
I'm the dumbest guy in the room. Anyway, so any regrets? Unicorn career described. Any regrets?
I kind of have like a life philosophy of having as few regrets as possible. I wish I would have lived overseas when I had the opportunity before getting married and having babies, but it's probably a blessing in disguise that I didn't when I had the opportunity to do so.
You can always go back.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Unicorn situation would be like if we had an Italian client that I could talk to about retail experiences, because then I could just put it all together. Perfettissimo. It would be amazing.
One last one, and it's a broad question. This could be anything. Get out of your retail head, for a second.
Sure.
Data and strategy.
Yeah.
What's bugging you?
That people aren't getting out enough. Here's what I mean. Like, I think that in business and in life, people are getting a bit sort of stuck in their own boxes, almost figuratively and literally. Like their house is a box, their car is a box, their office is a box, their phone is a box, and they're just like not getting out.
You mean outside?
I mean, outside, out of your
Theater,
town, out and talking to people of a different background or whatever. I mean, I think that people are just getting a little bit too closed in and shut down. I believe that the most innovative thinking I've ever had, the most unlocking experiences of my entire life have been when I had like just very open-minded situations. My husband and I love taking road trips, and we would say, this is before babies, we would say, okay, spring break, where are we going to go? You know what? Let's not answer that. Let's just follow the sun. And we would just get in the car and drive until we got to good weather. And just that those experiences of not having an agenda and not knowing what I'm going to fall into, and going to a restaurant and saying, I don't want to see your menu. Tell your chef I just want to try the thing he's most inspired by right now, the thing he's trying out. That's the thing I want. I think people need to get out and just try and see and open up a little bit more. I think it would help across just about every piece of the puzzle from society to business to offices and etc.
Pretty difficult to argue with that.
Get out there.
Yeah, man.
Do something different.
Yeah.
Anything.
Well, you also, kind of experience what other people experience. And that could apply to anything. It applies to retailers like you're saying, like what is that customer's experience? What is it, that missing part that they really need? If you don't know what that is because you haven't talked to them in like 3 years or you haven't been out there, so far removed.
And you're forgetting that your customer, you're sharing a wallet with many, many, many other services and experiences and businesses. If you don't get out, and so this is the guidance applied to them. If you don't get out and see what other people outside of your category are doing, you're not going to have clarity in terms of how it's changing expectations in other areas.
So true.
So get out there.
Anything else you want to add? Any words of wisdom?
Gosh. I would say that you got to remember, dear client or potential client that we could ever work with. We're in the business of design, and design isn't just creative. It's creative problem solving. And that's why a strategy and insights team that I'm so lucky to be a part of exists. Because it'd be really easy to tell the super talented designers on our team, in our studio, make something look good.
Draw a pretty picture.
Yeah, answer this one question, make it look good, and off you go. But it's strategic design that has a competitive edge, and it offers something unique and meaningful to the world or to the marketplace. So I would say, parting thoughts is, we are in the business of design, but don't just think of design as just something that's creative or good looking. It's strategic.
And you're right. It has to solve a problem.
It has to.
I mean, that's form and function, right?
Or else it's a kind of a waste of money.
Yeah, waste of time too.
Keeping it real.
which is even worse. Okay. Thank you, Leah. You've been very gracious.
Thank you, Lee.
Much appreciated for coming in here and sitting down and talk to us.
Let's do this again sometime.
All right. I'm up for it. Definitely.
Thank you.
We will definitely do it again.
Awesome.
People, be sure and listen next week for some more human interactions on hot topics. And I don't just mean Store of the Future and stuff like that. I mean, we will talk about things like what customers are missing out on. Also, be sure and subscribe to this podcast. WDcast is at wdpartners.com. You go to the hamburger menu and you hit what we think, and then go to the very bottom of the page in the center part there and hit the podcast icon. And we've got a bunch of them located up there now, including people like Huntington Bank and Google. And of course, I had a conversation with Alexa, which was it was interesting. I was flabbergasted by some of the things that she said. Caught me totally off guard. But anyway, much appreciated to everybody, and thank you, and we'll talk to you next week.